Good afternoon, everyone. This is the August 24th, Thursday meeting of the Mashpee Board of Sewer Commissioners. So if we can start the meeting, so we're convening the meeting at 2 o'clock, and we'll stand to have a pledge of allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, and as we're accustomed to doing, to have a moment of silence. Thank you. Is there anyone in the public who would like to have anything to say? Okay. So we'll move forward with looking at taking a look at the minutes from our last meeting of August 10th.
I read them, I saw one omission, and that was on the second page. It says Ms. Harris' presentation is attached here too, and I have no attachment.
Oh, it was given out at the meeting, so everybody got one. Were you here?
Yeah.
Yeah.
You should have gone at the last meeting.
Well, Susan, I think everybody got one, but we wanted to attach to the minutes so that it could be then put into the
Matter of record.
archives as a matter of
That's
record.
why I put that in there, so that when I send it to the town clerk, so it's going to be included with it.
Okay, thank
Did
you.
everybody want another copy of it? Because I know that we all got it at the last meeting.
Oh, yeah, no, it's not you. We did all get it.
Oh, I know.
Yeah.
Yeah,
we're
I
fine.
just,
Oh, okay, yeah, so it will be attached.
It is
to the
attached to the
minutes
records. Okay.
when I send it to the town clerk.
Perfect, thank you. We're not always familiar with all the different pieces that have to come together in order to get things codified.
Right.
Okay, so we'll start by following let's,
Oh, I
any
moved
other
it.
issues?
Yeah, I move that we accept the minutes of the meeting.
Okay, the minutes are accepted from August 10th. All right, now we'll move forward and take a look at our agenda. And perhaps, Catherine, you could give us just an
Sure.
overview of where we are with the website review.
Yeah, just a quickie. Meredith and I had an opportunity to meet with the planning staff, Evan, Lara, and Karen last week, and she gave us a preview, which Chad had already gotten, a preliminary preview of what the website is being redesigned for, within the limitations of the software system, the application. And it looks great. She has actually sent both of us the link for the current version, and we are reviewing what we can and making comments where possible. I'm still, for example, reviewing frequently asked questions, which Evan did some edits to. There's other things that we're reviewing, and I'm hoping that we can have it done by early next week for Karen, who's still working on it. She's even sent us a revised link this week, and I sent her a couple of pictures of green stakes because she wants to post that within the website where the green stake reference is. So there's, at least put those pictures in there to start with, maybe some pictures from the plant and the construction, and then change them out every once in a while. So that's where we're going. I'm hoping that the next session, perhaps, we can do a preliminary demonstration of what it's going to look like to this commission, and get some comments and review questions. We're talking about rolling it out through a public demonstration, potentially, as part of an outreach effort. So that's still in the potential works. And that's about where we are right now. Karen's doing a great job. And we're going to help her go as fast as she can. Thanks.
Thank you. It was nice to hear. And it was nice to know that we had gotten both an offer from Zachary Seabury at the Board of Health and also from Chris Ball at Mashpee TV to do the demonstration rollout for the public at a appointed time. And that's very exciting to do. So once we get it ready, once we've looked at it, we'll be ready to go with that. Okay. So Chris or Mackenzie, would you like to give us an update at all on where we are with content that we could share with you, or how we might be able to put it out there for Mashpee TV or the Mashpee Enterprise?
I can go first. I'll go first. Hello.
Hi,
Mackenzie
Mackenzie.
Ryan, Mashpee Enterprise. I almost said Mashpee TV. I spoke with Chad a little earlier today and just discussed, as I said before, I think at a previous meeting, I think it would be beneficial to people to run through the process of, oh, I have a green stake in my yard. This is the next steps of what I should be doing, who I should be contacting. I'm not positive on how to get in contact with a resident to do such a thing, but if we want to do like a mock-up of that scenario, I'm down to do that. Anything that you think would benefit the community to get more information about the process, I'm willing to do. And I can leave my card with any one of you and can get started on that if you'd like, more than willing.
Okay, Mackenzie, did you have any ideas of how we might want to do that? Would you be moderating a forum perhaps if we were to do it as a public way, or what
I think
ideas
it
might
would
you
be,
have had?
I could do an article, and I think it would be more of like a walkthrough, like a question and answer kind of thing of what almost as if I'm, as the writer, am the resident, and what questions I would be asking of, oh, I now have a green stake, this is the phone call that I make, I call my contractor, or to make sure that it's in the right place. What are the proper questions to ask him to know that? Because I'm not sure a lot of people know those questions or that process in its entirety. So I think kind of like a question and answer, back and forth, call and response kind of article could be a great way to do that. And also, anytime you guys want to get information out, I'm willing to write an article, or even you can contact our newspaper to get like notices out anytime you'd like, because I know the more information the public has, the better. It's always an open channel.
Terrific, thank you very much. And Chris, would you like to give us some information about Mashpee TV and how you might be able to give us a hand?
Good afternoon, Chris Ball from Mashpee TV. So far, we've done 3 segments regarding to the sewer and the sewer hookup. One was with Meredith and with Michaela, who described how people would go out and get financing and how to get help financing and what the process was. There's links to who to contact, et cetera. Then we did one similar to your idea, where we did what you do when you get a green stake, and we had one of the licensed utility installers, Ron Bonby, come in and describe in detail how to go. Certainly the enterprise would be more visible, and if Mackenzie did something like that, I think it'd be a big help to you. We also had Zach Seabury come in and describe what exactly happens on as far as the health department, what has to be done by the homeowner at that juncture. At one point, we would like to maybe go to, and this would be more, I think, curiosity and informational for the public, is go out to the plant and film, where people are, where, we are now as a town on that, and talk to somebody, and get a description on that. And we're certainly available to do whatever, as different subjects come up, you can throw them out there. And those links that we have on YouTube, you're certainly welcome to put on websites or anything like that, use them as you wish.
So just to clarify, Chris, this means that all of these 3 sessions so far are on YouTube, And so how would people access them? They
You
just
can go to
sewer-
Mashpee TV YouTube channel, and they're there. And we do put them on, the channels, they're scheduled in, and they're in there during the week.
Fantastic.
Now, what would be the proper search terms so that people wouldn't have to sift through a lot? If you're searching online
You go
for
to
the videos.
YouTube, go to Mashpee TV
Right.
YouTube, and then go to Mashpee Update. And then you'll see those, well, there's actually 4. We did another one on the tax exempt status, so.
Okay.
So there's 3 on this, what's going on with the wastewater, and 1 on tax exempt. So 1, 2, and 3 segments, they're numbered 1, 2, and 3 are as they relate to folks.
When,
That's just terrific. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
I think right now, the name of the game is get the information out to the residents, answer whatever questions are that are out there as we begin to move forward, because as we found from working on the website, we're past the planning stage now, at least for this segment. And now it's informational for people who are involved and who are connected.
And like I said, anybody that wants to come in and has an idea, we're willing to do it. And I know that Mackenzie and the Enterprise are, right there too. And, I think the 2 media outlets in town, we're there for you, so.
Thank you.
Chris, you have a drone, don't you?
Sort of. Well, it's on its way back. It got crashed into the pond last week. When the old ladies cleaning
underwater
garbage out of the
garbage.
pond. But I didn't believe that was their exact title, but apparently it is. But it became part of the garbage that came up. So, but it's repaired and on its way back. But we should have it back in the next day or 2. Do you have an idea?
Well, I was thinking that might be a cool way to show the project as well.
wonderful.
Yeah, we can do that. There's no ponds that we can splash in and out there, is it?
Meredith, last week when we were doing a little tour of the facility, the construction site with Frank, I asked how to set up a meeting. And he said, I'm here best Monday through Thursday. And I said, it's probably better under dry conditions, right? And he said, yes. So maybe.
Yeah, we'd love to get out there and do some filming. I think the drone's a great idea.
So maybe GHD can help us arrange a time. I think early in the morning would probably be a best.
Well,
That's the choice.
depending on the day of the week and, what else is going on.
Yeah.
Phyllis's cat gets me up at 3:30, so. Knocking on the door.
Thank you very much, Chris.
You're welcome.
I was going to ask, since our next area of agenda area is the construction update by GHD, but I was thinking that maybe we need to contact the engineers and get permission to do a drone footage or to do any kind of film. Perhaps you can give us some guidance on that, Sandy?
Sure.
This is working. Actually, we were hoping to have drone footage quarterly, to present to you, but we started getting into questions from the Joint Base being nearby and having the permit to do it. Maybe the TV is, because it's going to be one time, it might have better success with that. But I think it's a great idea, and we'd be happy to or help arrange it, and if you want narration on it too,
Yeah,
Perfect.
we could do that as well.
that would be wonderful.
Happy to.
It sounds like it's probably a good time to go ahead and plan something, get something on the schedule.
Yeah, well, the weather's still nice.
Yeah, exactly.
We don't have to worry about the trees so much, but
The
I
mud.
think it, they're cleared. But, and I lost the signal somehow.
Oh, jeez.
There it comes. Okay. Any other questions on that?
Would we have to get permission from Joint Base Cape Cod, and would you be able to organize that for us, or should we do it somehow?
I can, I don't know. I'm sure that the TV probably, since they have the drone, they probably know better how to arrange that.
Okay.
But I know that when we were trying to do it up at the beginning of the project, because it's a great way to show progress.
Yeah.
And document the progress,
Quickly, yeah.
that we just gave up.
Okay.
I think it made them a little nervous to have it be ongoing. Okay. Okay, I'll go ahead with the construction update. It's on one screen. I hope that's sorry for everybody on the other side. Oh, and now that just, wait a minute. There we go. We got it on both. Okay, so I'm here to provide an update on the construction activities that are going on in the town, looking at primarily the month of July and then a little bit into August and what's being planned for the future. Starting with the treatment plant itself. And I would say that as we move through July and into August, we're basically coming, like I said, last month out of the basement and working on the ground floor. So on this slide, you can see primarily the structural steel that's going into the process building. This is the structural supports for your ground level. There'll be a steel deck placed on top of that with some concrete infill. And that'll be your flooring for the ground floor where some of your process rooms are, as well as your administration offices and restrooms and so forth. And the smaller picture to the upper right is actually a look at the UV. Ultraviolet disinfection is going to go into that little corner. It's shallower than the basement is, and we're going to start to see some channels being formed there the wastewater will flow through, but also will hold the UV equipment, disinfection equipment. Some other things that are going on, the process building tank walls are still going up. More of them have been placed. This is actually a picture from more than a month ago, but of the process tank walls. But they continue to go up. That takes a little time. And then we're starting to see electrical go in the conduits that are going underground. This one's actually feeding the preliminary treatment building. There's the major electrical room in these, there's two, one in each building. This one takes the incoming service, so we've got some major conduits coming into this building. And other structures have progressed. On the working from left to right, you can see that's the effluent distribution box. Last month, that was a slab on grade with some rebar sticking out, so now we have walls up. The middle picture is another view of the preliminary treatment building. This building has a lot of forming. In other words, when they place concrete, they put up wood or metal flat structures that actually the concrete is placed against. None of these pictures actually show that. Well, you can see where those, in the back of that picture, where the bracing is, that's formwork. And because of the channels that go through this building, there's a lot of it being done. So this actual grade level takes a lot of effort to put in place because of the channels. And then the picture on the far right is the influent pump station, so it's all backfilled. A couple months ago, I showed you that big structure going in. Now it doesn't look so big, does it? Okay. Moving on to the and just to let you know what's going to happen in the future, because I didn't put that down, they're going to start setting the decking, I would imagine, in the next month. Continue with the process tank walls. Are also going to be what we call finishing the concrete, so it gets rubbed and gets a nice finish on concrete that's exposed. Be starting to put up the channel walls in the preliminary treatment building. We're going to start placing some of the odor control piping, the piping that runs to the odor control structures. More backfilling will be done, and we're going to continue to hydrostatic test some of the structures. Okay. Moving on to the collection system and starting with the north area, the north project. last month, this map shows what we were showing that was going to be done during July and into August, and primarily working down in the southern part of the northern project. They put in the gravity sewer and pump net. High Sachem Road saw some activities with the gravity sewers going in and a force main. They were doing some pavement overlay on Carlton, Swain, and Sewell. And for August, as we move forward, and by the way, the yellow lines on this is completed work, so you can see that they've got a lot done on this project. The red outlines outline the construction areas, and then the green are the different types of ongoing work. So when the gravity pipe's expected to go in, it's shown as green. If it's blue, that's a force main. So they're going to be doing some paving, and I believe they have started doing pavement in these areas on Carlton, Sea Oak, Swain, Sewell, Putler, Drew Lane. They're also going to be picking up some miscellaneous drainage work. We've come across drainage structures that have to be replaced or reworked, and then picking up some laterals, service laterals as they go. A couple of pictures from this area. This is on High Sachem. You can see the installation of the gravity sewer and a manhole. And this is some of the paving operations that's going on High Sachem Road. And last month I shared some pictures of other towns, and you can see this isn't quite as, these are smaller streets, so it's not quite as, well, it's a small street, so even though the equipment may not be as big, it does disrupt, does take up the road. And on the south system, this was the one that started later. Remember, it's the same contractor doing both jobs, so they put their efforts into the north to begin with. Now they're doing a lot of ramping up their efforts in the south. And during July, they were putting sewer service laterals in some of the Porthole Drive, Ship's Wheel, Ship's Rudder, Compass, etc., and putting gravity sewer on Ship's Lantern Drive, and they were beginning to work in the Summerwood condominium complex, as you recall. They had also mobilized to the pump stations, and they installed both wet wells. And as we moved into August, and even looking ahead a little bit, they've been continuing their work in Summerwood, and they'll be doing pressure testing on some of the roads, including Mashpee Neck, Ship's Wheel, and Ship's Rudder, and they're going to continue to work on the two pump stations. And I would imagine as the fall comes and we head into winter, that they're only going to be working at these pump stations. That I would imagine they're going to be done with the sewer work. So, as I mentioned, that they're working on the leaching pits. This is an installation of a leach pit. If you ever wonder what's underground in the leaching pit, that's a membrane fabric that's put down. That's to keep the stones from migrating into the sandy soils we have here. Keeps the stone around the leaching structure itself. And then you've got a lot of stone, which gives the stormwater a place to go as it infiltrates. It's the capacity. The first flush of rainwater that comes down can get into this structure and into that stone bed pretty quickly. And then, of course, your leaching pit is a concrete structure with holes in the side to allow the stormwater to get out.
I have a question for you, Sandy. Where is this leach pit? It's on Ship Lantern Drive as part of the piping system along the street or near the laterals?
That looks like it's in the main street.
And how many of these do you know would be there?
I don't know how many they've come across.
I guess I didn't mean a specific number, but in terms of how these work with what's being constructed and why, because we're familiar with leaching fields with septic systems.
Oh, no,
So-
this isn't septic, this is stormwater.
Okay,
Yeah, we haven't,
that's
the only
just a
place
clarification.
we run into septic are the condominium, and then we're pretty careful to not disrupt the leaching fields, and definitely don't hit the septic pits. the
Okay, so
septic.
this is a repair of what's been,
It's a reinstall.
it's a reinstall.
They had to
Okay.
take it out and move it.
Oh, okay, I understand now.
And some of these were not visible. They'd been paved over. I don't know about this one, but some of them were.
Thank you.
Yep. And as I said, we're starting in on the pump station. So on the left, you can see the shoring that went in, basically a big trench box. If you've gone out there and see the pipes going out, they use what's called a trench box to protect the excavation, but also the workers down in the pit, that in the trench, that the sands don't fall in and on them and engulf them. Same thing with the wet wells. They put in the shoring system to keep the soils back, and then install the wet well itself. So in the second picture, they're actually placing the wet well, which is a precast round concrete structure, into the Mashpee Neck pump station site. Now, cash flow. The treatment plant itself, as we've been tracking pretty much per the planned cash flow. We have an adjusted budget in red and an original budget in blue. We actually did execute the second change order of the project for $160,000. As you recall, the first one included the $1.5 million plus to construct tanks 2.1, 2.2, 3.1, 3.2, and 4.1 and 4.2. That was before they even hit the site. Nothing unusual in this. Everything's so far per budget. On the North project, the one that they hit hard from the get-go, you can see that in their cash flow, that they are tracking ahead of budget, or ahead of planned flows, I should say. And that project continues to go well. And then you can see with the South project that their cash flow is getting up to plan. So they put it aside a little bit at the beginning and focused their efforts on the other one, but now they're picking up again. And they're actually tracking ahead of their planned flows now, or cash expenditures now. And that's what I have.
I just have a couple of questions.
Uh-huh.
Have you run into any more difficulty, or run into any difficulty as far as the chain stuff, and being able to get equipment or supplies or anything that's holding you back at all? I mean, the progress has been remarkable. Your presentation was wonderful. So thank
Supply chain issues, you mean?
you. Yes, supply chain.
We could have a delay in the project from the electrical.
Oh,
We don't know what it is yet. We've been told things, if I reported everything I hear to you, it would be a disservice to you and to the community. So till we get our handle on it. But I will tell you that they have put us on notice that their motor control centers are showing to coming in later than expected.
But it's just been remarkable how flexible you've been and how the projects have been are just proceeding so quickly. It's just been very heartening to see. So thank you for the great
Appreciate
work.
it. I'll pass
The
it
only
on to
oth-
the contractors.
That'd be wonderful. The only other question that I have is, have you gotten any feedback from any of the community residents? And have they been happy? Have they been unhappy with any of the, there's always a little bit of disgruntlement about roads being dug up or put back together. But have you gotten any feedback from any of the construction issues?
On the plant side, I haven't heard anything, which is good, because what they see are traffic. And if you do hear something, we'd like to know, if you catch anything like, but these people stay on the site, and I think the transfer station's been working, the people there have been really wonderful to work with. On the collection system, I haven't heard anything, but I wouldn't be the first person they go to either. So I know our EPG's RPR out there is super with the people. I think you guys have experienced that he's very open and friendly and very responsive, and that goes a long way.
Terrific.
But I haven't heard of anything.
So keep our fingers crossed, it's all moving well.
Yeah.
Did anyone else have any other questions or comments?
I'm good. Yeah, thank you.
Yep.
Okay.
I have just as another curiosity question. When you said, and I think this is on the wastewater treatment facility, when you said that you're going to begin to test structures, does that mean that you'll be trying to put some water or something into the system and seeing if the seams are holding and the pipes are holding and
Yeah,
all
what
that?
we
But
do
how does
is
that work?
we secure the pipe penetrations, we'll plug those, and before the structure is backfilled, we fill it with water and we allow it to settle because the concrete itself is going to absorb some of the water. And then the worst stress it's going to be on for these structures is when we test it, because after we test it, they'll backfill it, which means there's going to be a load on the offsetting the hydrostatic load from the water in it. So you can have earth pushing one way, water pushing the other way. It's less of a load overall. But when we fill it up with water now, there's no earth pushing on it, and that's what it's designed for. So we check. We can visually walk around and see if there's any cracking, and we'll repair. Concrete will crack, and it does cure itself. It likes water. You know, best thing that can happen to fresh concrete is a little rain. Yeah. Okay. So that's what we're doing. We're checking it to make sure that it's structurally sound. I haven't had one fail on me, but it can happen. And then making sure that it doesn't leak, because you don't want wastewater getting into your groundwater.
Thank you. Your presentation was very clear, very understandable.
Good.
Are there any other comments or questions? No? Okay. And with the Commissioner's permission, I'd like to move the agenda forward since we do have Dan Kent, who's here from Conservation. This was the last item on the agenda, so rather than having Dan have to sit and listen to us, he was asked by Chad to come in and talk to us about the effects of fertilizer on water quality. So thank you, Dan, for being here.
Thank you for having me. I really appreciate it. So I'll just kind of get right into it. My name is Dan Kent, Assistant Conservation Agent for the town. And we, in town, we have a Regulation 31 that is only for wetland jurisdiction, and that is to control and limit the amount of fertilizer, the type of fertilizer that is used on wetland jurisdiction properties. So it is a little bit difficult to enforce. So we target the applicators, the landscapers or whatnot that are applying it, because quite honestly, after it's applied, it's a very complicated system to have to get it proven that it's the wrong fertilizer or that they're just not complying with what the actual regulation is. But before I get into that, I just want to go into a little bit of the issues of nitrogen and phosphorus within our water bodies. Within town, we do have a lot of development around pretty much every water body in town. All those houses, pretty much every single one of them has their own septic system. They are not all Title Vs. I know the Board of Health is working on that to try to get that up to par. I know from the conservation aspect, we do see projects come in where they're removing, say, a cesspool and upgrading it to an IA Title V system. And more currently, we've been seeing IA Title Vs come in that are also what's called I think it's called a pulverizer. It reduces phosphorus loads going into the ground as well. So there is two types there's the IA system that reduces the nitrogen and the pulverizer that reduces the phosphorus. So we have been seeing those come in, and they have been getting approved by the commission for obvious reasons. It's better for the resource area, and it's better for everything in general. And that's at the cost to the applicant as well. The issue we have is nitrogen and phosphorus are both used in fertilizer. In town right now, there is a ban. You cannot apply just phosphorus fertilizer to your lawns at all. That's enforced by Board of Health, Conservation, and another board. But that is not always a concern, because that would actually really hurt your lawn if you were to do that, and the residents do know that. So they'll have a mix of nitrogen and phosphorus within their fertilizers. When nitrogen hits the soil, it leaches right in and goes right into the water body. Once it's in the water body, it is free forming and free moving. It will not bind to the soil. It will not bind to the sediment. It will just move as it wants throughout the freshwater body. So for instance, at Wakeby Mashpee Pond and Johns Pond, you will see a lot of that nitrogen, if not all of it, end up going down the rivers to the bays at one point or another. And that's why in some of the bays, you'll see a buildup of stuff on the bottom of the water column that is just not good for the bay. I've heard it referred to as muck, mayonnaise, a couple of different things. But the bottom line is that it's not naturally there in that large number. Okay, it is naturally forming in nature, but not in that large number. So the nitrogen will just kind of move around as it pleases, and it will not bind. Phosphorus itself within a freshwater body will bind directly to the soil. The biggest issue we have with that currently is over at Santuit Pond. As you may or may not know, there are some aerators, bubblers that are in the pond to keep the water column under the water continuous so the phosphorus can't bind as well, but it doesn't mean it's not binding. It's just kind of slowing it down and keeping it on the move. When phosphorus binds to the soil in a water body, that is really bad. There's not many microorganisms that consume phosphorus or convert it, and because of that, it could stay there for a very long time, such as Santuit Pond. One of the biggest issues at Santuit Pond is that the bottom of that pond is not pure sediment or rocks or anything of that. It's a lot of peat, and peat is fantastic at holding in phosphorus. It's very efficient at that. So that's a problem over there. But the phosphorus is an issue as well all throughout town because it is binding to the soils, it is binding to the sediment within every pond. And our ponds don't mix. There's ponds always mixed. The bottom water column goes up to the top and vice versa throughout the year. Our ponds don't do that as often. I believe they are dimictic, which means it's once a year, if not just twice a year, if not just once a year. And for a pond set in that kind of natural setting, when you have an increase of nitrogen or phosphorus within the system, it's going to stay there for a while, and it's not going to naturally filter out. So that's the issue with those. For instance, you will see after heavy rains like we had 2 weeks ago, there was a no shell fishing. That's a mandate after a certain amount of rain, they have it. But the reason for that is because everything that is on people's lawns, everything that is on their garden beds, everything that's on the pavement, the concrete gets washed directly into the water. That was a lot of rain we had within one day, and because of that, we had a lot of leaching into the systems. It was also a teachable moment for us because it showed us where we had some failures in some of the infrastructure that has already been improved. So that's something that we do look out for. Though we may have a lot of rain and it's a, quote, disaster, we do look for the problem areas and then fix them as soon as we can. So DPW, natural resources, and conservation work together on that. But because of that, there is some stipulations with Regulation 31 for nitrogen loading. Basically is what it comes down to. You have to use an organic type of fertilizer. It can only be so much fertilizer, nitrogen within the fertilizer. And your grass as well has to be a certain type of grass species. It's 10% bluegrass only, but as you may imagine, proving that someone has 10%, 20%, 30% of a certain type of grass in their mix gets down to property rights, gets down to sampling, and can take quite some time. So it's not always feasible for us to go through with that process. So that is one of the biggest concerns with nitrogen and phosphorus loading in town. When you have big rain events, it goes into the water right away, and then it's just either phosphorus just stays there for a while, or the nitrogen just free moves, and then you're going to have issues down in the bay. Or the nitrogen as well can also be consumed, as you've seen on Wakeby Mashpee, for instance, in particular this year, where the microorganisms consume that nitrogen in very large numbers, and they make the water unstable, unsustainable for pretty much anything to be going in it for a given amount of time. So it is something that needs to have direction and has to be looked into. I know I've heard a lot of things for a fertilizer ban here in town, a fertilizer reduction, things of that. I am all for it as a conservation agent. Anything we can do to reduce the amount of, nitrogen, phosphorus, anything of that nature runoff into the ponds is absolutely essential at this time. Whether that's with or without the sewer system, it's going to be needed because the system itself is already overloaded in our town, and it can only get worse from there. So reducing it as much as we possibly can at any point in time is absolutely needed in this town right now. When it comes down to a fertilizer ban or restriction or more regulations on it, my biggest concern is always enforcement. That's going to come down to Conservation and Board of Health having to enforce it, or one or the other. In my case, it's definitely going to be Conservation, as it would be a direct resource area issue if there's any increase. So with that enforcement, it comes down to proving they're using the wrong one, or proving they're using it in general. If it's a full-out ban within, say, the resource area, then you could, not easily, but you would have an easier time tracking it. To say, we saw you go in with your fertilizer, we know where the buffer zone starts, we know where it ends, and you were absolutely in there applying the fertilizer. And then at that point, we would, contact the homeowner, contact the individual that's applying it, whether it's a company or just a private individual, and we would go through it from there. But again, enforcing it can be vastly difficult. When you have all these houses in town that are using fertilizer, some houses in town that literally have green grass going up to the water's edge. That's already, I hate to say the word, quote, grandfathered in, end quote, that we are stuck with enforcing on. It's one of those things that can be very difficult. So it might come down to more staff having it. I know places like Chatham, they have a seasonal staff member who comes in every season and just for fertilizer enforcement. Just for that. I don't know the cost. I don't know how that works, honestly, but I do know that one of their aspects within Dennis and within Chatham is you can't even have fertilizer dropping on a concrete pavement. If it is, you have to clean it up right away. Otherwise, that is a finable offense. And the reason for that is because it's on pavement. Any water source comes, going to wash it off that pavement into the stormwater management systems immediately, if there are stormwater management systems. All right, and that gets into another thing, but enforcement's always a big thing that needs to be taken into consideration. That's for certain. When it comes to any fertilizer ban, I always would recommend a blanket statement. Not, if your property's within 100 feet, you can only fertilize 50 feet of the buffer zone. I would recommend a blanket statement when it comes to that so that you don't have any ifs, ands, or buts. Oh, well, they can do it and I can't, or anything of that nature. You're going to run into that either way. Because you might have, for instance, we had an application come forward to us where the neighbor was 100% in the flood zone, and literally their property line was the border of the flood zone. So their neighbor was able to level their entire lot 100% down to sand and build a house, where the person in the flood zone had to go through the whole Conservation Commission hearing. They didn't understand it completely, but they did in the end once we showed them the maps. But because of that, you don't want to run into an issue of this person can do it and this person can't. So if it's going to come into a ban, any regulation, I would recommend a blanket statement instead of an if, and, or a but situation. It just makes it easier for enforcement, and it just makes it more streamlined for enforcement as well. Instead of having one violation last for weeks or months, you could just wrap it up really quick and then say, from here on out, you can't do it anymore. So that's where we're at. It's a very big issue. It absolutely is. Whether people are fertilizing their grass, whether they're fertilizing their gardens, whatever it may be. I see a lot of gorgeous gardens right on the water's edge that aren't always native, but that's how it is at this current standard time. And as conservation, we do work with each permit applicant to try to reduce their green grass and try to increase their buffer zone. In other words, we try to have them willingly plant more natural vegetation within the buffer zone. Therefore, if there is any storm event that comes in and washes the nutrients out, it has more of a leaching field, basically, of natural barriers and roots in the ground that are retaining it, but also vice versa. If there's a flooding event coming in and washing it out, it works both ways. So it's very important for us we have been working with applicants to try to reduce their green lawns up to the water, or just having them aware of the fertilizer regulation 31, and then hoping for the best from there. It's one thing for someone to cut their trees down illegally and get a call. It's very easy to prove they cut their tree down that day, compared to someone illegally fertilizing. We show up in an hour, it's already been fertilized, and there's almost no way we can even prove they fertilized in general. So it is very difficult. Within Regulation 31 as well, something we've been really harping on people to adhere to is the berm. Within Regulation 31, if you have green grass going up to the water and you want to do any work within the buffer zone, we are requesting that you adhere to Regulation 31, which is to create a 1-foot tall berm that's about 3 feet wide. What that berm does is a couple things. One, it delineates exactly where you are to stop cutting the lawn, or you cannot just remove it. It shows them a physical on-site without having to look at a blueprint plan that this is where I have to stop. Also, what it does is it creates a nice berm for vegetation to grow on naturally or be planted, which allows for more absorption of any issues going on. So if there is leaching going on, whether it be from anything, fertilizer or anything else, it has a better chance, the roots do, to absorb that, retain it more, and reduce the amount that's going into the waterway. And that's something that we've been really working on, and applicants have been more than happy to comply to that, because at the end of the day, it comes down to, you want to do a raise and replace in your house, or you want to expand your porch, can you just please install a berm so we know where to stop? And they're usually more than happy to comply with that. So that's where we're at with it. And yeah, any questions?
Dan, I do. We have a lot of golf courses in town. Is there something they can switch to? Are they being helpful with you?
Golf courses are a little complicated sometimes. They have their own restrictions, or sometimes lack thereof restrictions. Some golf courses in town do have ag restrictions as well. And because of the ag restriction, the way it works, they're pretty much allowed to pump fertilizer and herbicide onto their agricultural crop. However they want to do. I don't want to say pump it unregulated or uncontrollably. They do have a set amount they use every year. With an ag restriction, they don't need to report that to us, though. So there is one of those things there. I would love to see more golf courses reduce the amount that they use. I can't tell you exactly how much they use or even what they're using. But when it comes down to it, they do have restrictions that allow them to utilize things of that nature legally. Yeah.
Interesting.
You're raising some very important issues, Dan, and if someone wanted to do something about solving the problem of the nutrients getting into the land, it seems that it's a multi-pronged approach. So we've got to be able to educate the homeowners and be sure that they're going to be in touch with conservation, and sometimes that may not happen. So that's what you're talking about with the need for enforcement, right?
Yeah. I mean, education is absolutely paramount. The homeowners need to know, one, they're within a wetland jurisdiction, and two, the regulations within their jurisdiction of their property. So we do reach out and try to inform them of it. And then it comes down to if they're going to adhere to it and things of that nature. But yeah, and it is one of those things, the homeowners, you're relying on them to cooperate.
This might be a nice topic to have for our education process, because if we're building a sewer system to try to remove the nutrients, perhaps we should be considering not putting more nutrients in as we're trying to remove what's already there. So did someone else have another comment or question? Because I have a couple to share with you.
I do. Where would a homeowner find a map of the wetland restriction area boundaries?
So on our website, on the town's website, there is a GIS map that you can utilize. Now, on that map itself, it's going to have a couple of things you can look at, anywhere from flood zone areas, which is a very, very large resource area here in town, extremely large resource area. So there's the flood zone area, there's vernal pools, there's also a wetland index inventory. Now, I don't want to say downside, but I direct people to this all the time, because it helps them answer questions before they contact us. So when they contact us, they're more informed of what's going on. And it makes it easier for both parties, quite honestly. So there's also the wetland inventory index, and then you would have to take a measurement from there, which you can do right on the map, to see where the 100-foot buffer ends from that wetland inventory. Not all the lines on it are completely 100% accurate. They might be off by 3, 6 feet, 10 feet. So sometimes when you look at the map, you might think someone's encroaching on someone else, and they're not encroaching. It's just the map itself is just off by a bit. But it does give you a very good estimate and idea of where the wetlands are in town, what the wetland is, because each resource area has its own performance standards, as well as the importance of that wetland. It's going to let you know it's a river system, it's 200 feet, it's not 100 feet, or it's going to let you know this is a isolated vegetated wetland, or what we have a lot of in Mashpee is coastal, and that's where a lot of our permits come from, is the coastal environments, the inland banks, the coastal banks, the saltwater ponds, things of that nature, especially salt marshes. So you can look that up on the GIS map itself. And I always say, if anybody has any questions about it, please don't hesitate to reach out. I'd rather people know beforehand instead of me showing up after the fact. It's better for us in the conservation, and it's way better for an individual homeowner, because they're not getting caught up in a violation that they now have to comply with before they even go through with the project they wanted to do. So it is a very important tool. I use it every day, every single day for my job. I do.
Great. Go ahead,
I
Catherine.
use it all the time, too. The shade that's visible on the map and the elevation can trick you a little bit.
Yes.
When you're looking at boundaries, so
Yeah.
give some leeway there. So
Yeah.
I think, I wanted to say that I agree with everything you said, and your presentation was excellent. Thank you.
Thank you.
But I think we need to figure out a way to work with you as well to try to emphasize how important this is as we're working in one direction to try to clean up the environment. Let's look at all the different ways we need to do that. And as you're talking, I'm thinking about, okay, so you're in touch with the homeowners when they come to you, unless they've done something and someone reports them. So that can be a negative framework, so we need to turn that into a positive framework. The other would be the landscapers. You've started talking with them because they then approach many different homeowners. Have you
Yes.
had much resistance from them? Have they been cooperative?
It's been a hit or miss. So it depends. Sometimes they're just not aware, and they're just going as many houses as they can get in a day. And then when you make them aware, I direct them directly to the map so they can utilize the map. And then there's some that just, for lack of a better phrase, they work it into their bill. Quite honestly, is what they do. They'll show up and do a job, and I talk to them monthly about things, and they just incorporate, if it's a fine or compliance, they just incorporate it into their cost of doing business, quite honestly, which is a massive issue. That can be very painstaking for me to go through, but at the end of the day, I have to work with it the best I can. And that's just how it goes. I know some of the recent ones have been a lot of illegal cutting, which have been an issue because then you have direct paths for leaching going right to the water, or right to a coastal bank and deteriorating it. So those are things that I'm really trying to work with the landscapers. I will say most of them have gotten the picture clear by this point, because they don't want to be on record as having a fine or on record as being involved with their company name in a violation letter, which I completely understand. And they're much more easier to work with than the ones that just incorporate into their cost of business.
Sure.
So they have been willing to work. I know sometimes I'll just be driving around to inspections, and I'll just stop and ask, fertilizer company, hey, how's it going? You're in a wetland jurisdiction area. They're like, yeah, and then you ask them, what are you using for fertilizer? Oh, I dumped it in my hopper before I left the shop and threw the bag out. And I'm like, that's very convenient, but next time, please let us know, so we can go through it from there. Because at that point, I don't even have permission to go on the property to check. So it is one of those things. I have been including it in order of conditions for
Good.
pretty much every, it's a blanket order of conditions now. Regulation 31's in there, and if you don't know, their order of conditions is the actual paperwork permit they get for any project they have. So any notice of intent, they'll get an order of conditions within 21 days. On that order of conditions, that is filed with the Barnstable Registry of Deeds, so it is a legal document, and they have to adhere to it for perpetuity of the house, not the homeowner. So you will see a lot of order of conditions going out with Regulation 31 directly on it. So whether the homeowners are aware of it all the time, we do make them aware of it because they have to, one, sign a form that says they read the order of conditions, and then two, if I have to show up in violation or in concern that it's not being adhered to, they learn it very quick then.
Yeah.
And at that point, they're more than willing to work with us. And that's that. So if there was a fertilizer ban, it would make it much more, I don't want to say easier, but it would just make it easier on the homeowner to say, so you're saying I just can't fertilize anything? Yeah, that's exactly what I'm saying. So it's one of those things, instead of saying you absolutely can fertilize, Regulation 31, we have this, this, and this, and this. So for us, whatever it comes down to, we will absolutely do our jobs and enforce it. That's not a question. It'll just come down to how the enforcement works out based on how the regulation is written.
It would probably be helpful if we could also talk to the store owners that are selling the fertilizer and how we'll be able to work with them. And we're talking about dollars in people's pockets.
Absolutely.
And that becomes very complicated. So if we could figure out to teach the landscapers or to have them find a different way of making their economic targets would be, well, building a native garden as opposed to putting in a fertilized lawn. So we've got a lot of education to do across the board, and without trying to penalize people, but to try to figure out a way of how can we all begin to work together to change what we're putting into our environment and to keep it from getting worse, and not just put it on on your shoulders to say, well, you know, little by little we can sort of knock them off. But we're not going to do that. I mean, we've got to try to work together. We've got to try to figure out, well, how can we make it economically feasible for people to work on the problem the best way?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah.
I know the best way, I always put it if I have some contention or opposition to it, I always say, you know, this town's been developing extremely fast since 1990, 1992, extremely fast. I know for 5 years it was the fastest growing town in the state of Mass. And that was in the 2000s sometime, I'm not sure of the dates. But I always explain to people that because of that, it's time that we allow nature to breathe. Because allowing it to breathe and allowing it to inhale, because right now it's only inhaling, it's not exhaling.
Right.
And we need to allow it time to exhale and take a second breath. And to do that, we all have to work together to, whether it's reduce fertilizer, whether it's the sewer system going faster and getting people hooked up to it faster, or whatever it may be, we need to work together to do so. So that's how I always direct at it.
Great. Are there any other questions from any of the other commissioners? Okay. Thank you. That was an extraordinary presentation, and we can keep trying to work together, and perhaps again with the volunteering that Mackenzie had from Mashpee Enterprise and also from Chris Ball, being able to, one, have a conversation of your presentation around what the regulations are and what people can do, but probably to have a question and answer among homeowners and vendors and landscapers, and let's get everyone talking to figure out what the concerns are and how can we fix it rather than it becoming adversarial.
Absolutely.
That would be kind of fun to do.
I do have one
Go ahead.
kind of comment, is that our target is to reduce the nitrogen in the bays. And obviously fertilizer is part of the problem, and then we've got the wastewater, which is part of the problem. Is there any way to figure out which is contributing what percentage of that?
For the short answer, I want to say yes. I don't know, I know UMass Dartmouth is working right now on each freshwater body in town to analyze it and assess all of that. I don't know how far they are on it. That would be more natural resources would have a better understanding of that. But yeah, that would be something that would be very, very valuable information, because then you could really target a metric in what you're going after. And I think that would be extremely valuable for the town, for this board especially. Yeah.
Yeah, I've seen some general estimates along those categories, but I have a lot of doubt about the specificities, particularly for stormwater contributions. I'm not sure the data has been up to speed.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
I'm glad that UMass is doing something.
Yeah. They are working on it exactly where they are. I'm just not 100%. So.
Great.
On the I can answer part of that. On the Mashpee-Wakeby Pond study, that's been going on now for a year, and it has another year to go. And from the presentation that Dr. Eichner had given, they have ways of being able to see what the contributions are from septic, what the contributions are from wherever the contributions of nutrients are, is as specific as which houses are closest to and contributing to the problems around the water bodies. So the sources and changing the sources or looking at where the sources are we'll get that information probably by the end of December is what their target is. But that's just Mashpee-Wakeby Pond. I think if you look at the pond study on Santuit Pond, a lot of that information is already available. So I think each of the different water bodies that have had a study, some of this information is available. The difficulty is getting it all in one place so that it's understandable
Yeah.
and digestible. And this might be something that we could do in our education formatting and being able to get the information out to people so that we can begin to address it in a number of ways.
There's a ton of, well, Tom, that there's a lot of storm water outfalls that go into these places.
Yeah.
And they target that for taking measurements. And then they also do it at different areas around the pond just to try and balance out the results. But in the end, sometimes I think the estimates of stormwater contributions can be low. So I'm anxious to see
Yeah.
newer data from all better sources.
Yeah, I know, I'm definitely interested to see what the numbers come out
Yeah.
to, that's for certain.
Thank you very much for your presentation.
Thank you very much, I appreciate your time.
So when we get ready to do an education forum in some way, we can check with you with your schedule and
Yes.
maybe have it as a,
Yes, absolutely, please do.
Conversation.
I'd be more than willing to assist in any way I can, especially if it's going to pursue this town and getting a better environmental standard, that's for certain.
thank you.
All right, thank you.
Any other comments or questions? You know, it's such a complex issue to have to deal with. There are so many people involved at so many different levels, from those who are, just trying to, make a living, to those who are trying to, have a pretty lawn. And maybe we can say, well, native plants can be even prettier than a pretty lawn. So it's a big education change. Okay, our next item on the agenda, I don't have any new information about the intermunicipal agreements. I know that that's something that's being worked on, but I don't have, and I don't know where we are with that. Does anyone else have anything to offer on it?
No idea.
Table that till next time.
Yeah, we can table that for next time.
Someone from
I knew
the,
that
does
the-
someone on the select board have
Yes,
any
Do-
insight?
Dr. Colombo is working on it.
Good,
Yeah.
okay.
And then in terms of looking at reviewing sources of funding that's available, at the end of our last meeting, last time, Chad and I were talking about contacting Senator Moran and Representative Vieira to give us some insight on the funding that's available for septic, for the private septic systems, and we're still in conversation with Representative Vieira at this point, and we'll have more information back to you when those discussions are completed. Okay, are there any other areas or conversations that you would like to engage in, or you would like to suggest, or even suggest it as a topic area for further discussion? We can begin to move forward on our communication, and we'll be in touch with Mashpee Enterprise by way of Mackenzie Ryan, and Mashpee TV by way of Chris Ball. And that's very exciting to think about how we can do this. And again, thank you, Catherine, for your work on the website, because I think that also will be a wonderful forum,
Yeah.
or being a tool to use to educate the public when we start to roll these out as well.
Yeah.
Well, then, hearing no other business, may I have a motion?
I so move.
Okay.
I'll second the motion to adjourn.
Okay, then we are adjourned at 5 minutes after 3.